London, 1600, a city of 500,000 souls, choking on coal smoke and its own ambition. It was the largest metropolis in Europe, but also a labyrinth of danger. Here, unimaginable wealth lived next door to open sewers, and life was cheaper than a loaf of bread. In this documentary, we take you directly onto the streets of the 17th century. You will walk across Old London Bridge, a chaotic, suspended city where houses hung over the abyss and the heads of traitors rotted on iron spikes. You will witness the apocalyptic destruction of the Great Fire, a heat so intense it melted the bells of St. Paul's Cathedral. From the frozen festivals on the ice of the Thames to the execution of kings at Whitehall. This is the story of a city on the edge of collapse. Subscribe to the channel right now, hit the like button and leave a comment below. Are you ready to step back in time? Let the journey begin. To understand the soul of 17th century London, you must first survive its heart, Old London Bridge. By the 1600s, this structure was already an ancient beast, a relic of the medieval world struggling to support a modern empire. It was not merely a crossing, it was a living, breathing gauntlet. The bridge was a densely packed street suspended over the water, connecting the city of London with the lawless borough of Southwark. Look closely at the architecture. Houses, shops, warehouses and chapels lined the bridge so completely that from the riverbank it looked less like a bridge and more like a fortress floating on the water. These buildings were not small. They rose 5, sometimes 6 stories high. Space was so valuable that the upper floors projected outward, hanging perilously over the roadway, nearly touching the houses opposite. This created a dark, suffocating tunnel below, where sunlight rarely touched the cobblestones. But the true terror lay beneath the waterline. The bridge rested on 19 narrow stone arches supported by massive piers, protected by wooden casings called starlings. These structures were an engineering nightmare. They acted like a dam, restricting the tidal flow of the Thames by nearly 80%. The result was a ferocious man-made rapid. The difference in water levels between the two sides of the bridge could reach 6 feet, creating a roaring waterfall that never stopped. For the boatmen of London, navigating these arches was a deadly gamble. They called it shooting the bridge. Thousands of accidents occurred here. Boats were smashed against the stone pilings, passengers were sucked into the swirling vortex, and the roar of the water was so deafening that residents claimed they could not sleep when they visited the quiet countryside. The silence was too unsettling. Yet, despite the noise, the vibration, and the constant risk of fire, the bridge was the center of luxury commerce. It was lined with high-end haberdashers, textile merchants, and booksellers. To live on the bridge was a status symbol, even if your waste fell directly into the river below, landing on the very boats that carried your customers. Crossing the bridge was also a lesson in obedience. At the southern entrance stood the stone gatehouse. Here, the monarchy displayed its power in the most gruesome way possible. The heads of executed traitors were dipped in tar to preserve them against the elements and impaled on long iron spikes. As travelers entered London, the empty eye sockets of the king's enemies stared down at them. It was a brutal, effective reminder. In this city, order is maintained by blood. The river below was the true highway of the city. In an era of muddy, potholed streets, the Thames was the quickest way to travel. The water was crowded with barges carrying coal from Newcastle, timber from the Baltic, and spices from the East Indies. But mostly it was filled with wherries, small water taxis. The river echoed with the shouts of thousands of boatmen crying "oars" to attract passengers. And then there was the weather. The bridge's restrictive arches slowed the river so much that in severe winters, the Thames would freeze solid. These were the times of the frost fairs. The dangerous river transformed into a carnival. Tents were pitched on the ice, oxen were roasted whole, and Londoners played bowling and football on the frozen surface. It was a surreal moment of joy, a city walking on water, standing in stark contrast to the usual danger the river presented. This bridge stood for over 600 years, the only permanent crossing in the city, a bottleneck through which the entire history of London was forced to pass. September 1666. This date is a scar on the city's history. The London you see here, built of timber, pitch and straw, dried out by a long hot summer, was a tinderbox waiting for a spark. When the fire began in a bakery on Pudding Lane, it didn't just burn, it devoured. The view from the Tower of London on the evening of September 4th reveals the scale of the horror. The sky was not black, but a bruised, glowing orange. The fire created its own weather system, a windstorm of extreme heat that drove the flames west. Old St. Paul's Cathedral, the massive Gothic giant dominating the horizon, was thought to be a safe haven because of its stone walls. It was not. The wooden scaffolding around it caught fire, and the heat inside became so infernal that the lead roof didn't just collapse, it melted. Eyewitnesses described a river of molten lead flowing down Ludgate Hill, glowing red in the night, while the stones of the cathedral exploded like grenades. In just 4 days, the medieval city was erased. 13,000 houses were destroyed. It was a tragedy, but in a cruel twist of fate, it was also a cleansing, sterilizing the filth of the Great Plague that had killed 100,000 people just a year prior. But London is not just about the elements, it is about power, and that power resided in Westminster. This scene from 1647 captures a different kind of danger, political tension. The atmosphere here is colder, more rigid. To the left stands the old Palace of Westminster and the Great Westminster Hall. In the 17th century, this was not just a government building, it was a battleground. This was the era of the English Civil War, where Parliament dared to challenge the absolute authority of the king. Just beside it lies Westminster Abbey. For centuries, this has been the spiritual anchor of the nation, the place of coronations and royal burials. In the chaos of the 1600s, as regimes changed and heads rolled, the Abbey stood as a silent stone witness. It saw Oliver Cromwell rise to power, and it saw his body dug up and desecrated when the monarchy returned. Further upstream, we see the Palace of Whitehall. In the 1640s, this was the largest palace in Europe, a sprawling, disorganized complex of over 1,500 rooms. It was the center of the royal universe, but it became the stage for the monarchy's darkest hour. It was from a window in the banqueting house of this very palace that King Charles I stepped out onto a scaffold in 1649. With one swing of the axe, the king was beheaded, a shock that reverberated across the entire known world. Looking at Whitehall now, we see a grandeur that is lost forever. Almost the entire complex was destroyed by a different fire in 1698. And finally, we look to Richmond Palace. Once the brilliant sanctuary of the Tudor dynasty, the place where Queen Elizabeth I breathed her last, by the mid-1600s it was a ghost. It was being sold off, brick by brick, its glory days behind it. It serves as a final reminder that in London, nothing is permanent. Palaces crumble, dynasties fall, and fire takes the rest. These scenes are not just pictures, they are evidence of a lost world. A world where life was short, brutal, but incredibly vivid. Standing here, virtually walking these streets, we realize that the London of today, the glass skyscrapers and paved roads, is built directly on top of this history. We are walking over the ashes of 1666. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to check out our other documentaries and let me know in the comments, which lost city should we explore next? Rome, Babylon, Tenochtitlan? The choice is yours.